Welcome everyone to Nightcap Season 2 Candid Cafe Conversations. I have the pleasure, the honor, the privilege to be here with some of my very good friends. I am today joined by someone who a lot of you may have seen around, my wonderful spouse, James, as well as two other people who are also fantastic people, Red and Brandon. Yay! Hello.
Yay!
First off, how are you all? How are you doing? How is life? How are
Good.
things in this moment?
Good.
I'm great. How are you?
I'm tired.
I'm busy as always.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's the truth.
Yeah, we
My
are
head
all.
hurts.
Aha! We are all very busy people with schedules that are everywhere. But if folks do not know who all of you are for whatever reasons, who are you folks? I let you in here, but who are you? What sort of things do you do specifically together? We'll start with Brandon and Red. You two are individual people, but you do things together as a group peoples. What do you do?
So, Red and I are both co-founders of Huntsmen's Hydra, which is a tabletop RPG channel on Twitch, along with a Discord community. And then we'll probably get into future plans for that. But right now, it's showing off our favorite tabletop board games and card games on Twitch and doing fun stuff with that. And then as an individual, I'm all over the heckin' place. Hi, Brandon, aka Ashtonworks, and not only am I a moderator for Maria on this channel that you're watching right now, I'm also social media for Goblin Society Games, which will be talked about in a minute. And then I'm also a tabletop RPG designer on top of that, and a streamer also on Twitch.
So what Brandon's saying is he does everything.
I am everywhere, everything, all the time. Hi.
He's also started doing consulting for like OBS stuff, and just like general like production for streams. He does everything.
So what we're saying is hire Brandon for basically anything.
And then if I can't actually do it, I'll put you in touch with someone who can.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Send money, get good results.
Yes.
Red, what sort of stuff do you do with alongside Huntsman's Hydra and then also individually?
Yeah, so for Huntsman's Hydra, I generally do more of the like financial aspect for things, and I help make the overall decisions and kind of try to think the best way to phrase it. The handling of documentation and logistics for ensuring things are done in a way that is, I want to say compliant, but it doesn't need to be compliant with. That's my work side coming out. But like in a way that makes things easier to handle down the road if something were ever to come up.
Like production type.
Yeah, like production, just like I guess like overall just like business administration type things.
Yeah. Business management.
Yeah. And then also I appear in some of the game or like the Magic the Gathering stuff that we do on the channel. And then also I will be jamming my own games on there too. As far as myself, I stream my own channel at Mischievous Red. A variety of things. I'm hoping to do more. Right now I do video games. I'm hoping to do kind of ease my way more into the art space with drawing and painting. But I also appear on a bunch of other streams doing TTRPG stuff. A lot of guest shows that there's no consistent scheduling with.
Well, except for Vampire, which is over on Mixdabbers that you're on a lot.
Yeah. I mean, like, overall, it's kind of just like whenever the seasons line up and things like that. So it's a lot of variability. But yeah, that's me.
Ooh. And then of course, if you know me at all, I talk about it all the time. James and I, we are co-founders of Goblin Society Games. James, what is Goblin Society Games and what do you do for it?
Goblin Society Games is a company. I don't.
This is what,
it's
as James has said, I get paid to do this.
Yeah. It's kind of whatever I feel like doing at the moment, to be totally honest. We started out doing some D&D supplements. Probably will continue to do those, but also branching out into more board games, card games, different takes on TTRPGs, and just physical gaming in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you do though? What do you do in all of that?
I don't know. I'm mostly am the designer. I'm usually the one sitting at the computer for hours on end until my eyes bleed, figuring out what font is the best. I'm also the one that's usually setting up like our scheduling and stuff. So I guess I'm the director. That's a good word.
That is an applicable word. You also, at least for the last like 2 or 3 projects, have been the main writer of the projects.
Yeah.
And for me, I do some of the in-house art, as well as the logistics, working with Brandon, making sure that we have a social media presence, and collaborating and reaching out to people for reviews or for just I'm the people person. I go out and I make connections with people and talk about our stuff. If by the time this airs, we will have the James and I at the very least will have been at Gen Con, and part of what I do is and what I did for Gen Con is reach out, and someone was interested in having our stuff showcased during Gen Con, and so we got to test out some of our stuff, and I'm sure it went perfectly the entire time. But the thing that I really wanted to focus on today was tabletop RPG in general, since that's the thing that the 4 of us kind of are just in one way or another. And then specifically because we both did legitimately start businesses, the both of us being Huntsmen's Hydra and Goblin Society Games. They're small businesses, and we both started them at a very interesting year. So I kind of wanted to talk about all of that, and start lightly in the TTRPG element, because that is something that I love to talk about and could talk about forever and ever and ever. So an easy softball question for the entire room is, what are some of your favorite game systems at the moment? Or ever, if there's a small list.
I'm just gonna say 5e, and that's not so much because I think the mechanics of 5e are great. I just like the level of polish and the amount that there is, you know. It's also, I have a lot of respect for the open game license. I think that's an incredibly useful thing for people like us to work with. But there are other systems that I think have more interesting mechanics, but I will say 5e is pretty good and very accessible.
What other systems and besides 5e do you enjoy playing that you've played before?
Other systems that I have played before are few and far between because I'm usually just running games. I do enjoy Savage Worlds. I think it is, I don't want to get too much into like review territory, but I think it has some good stuff going for it and bad stuff going for it. It is simultaneously extremely quick and easy to run, and can get exceedingly bogged down in just different modifiers. But I enjoy running Savage Worlds quite a bit because I'm not 100% sure what it is, but there is something very fast paced to playing Savage Worlds and running it. Other tabletop RPGs that I've played a little bit of Cyberpunk Red, teeny bits of Apocalypse.
Powered by the Apocalypse.
Thank you. Powered by the Apocalypse. That's mostly it. I really haven't played enough others to have a strong opinion.
That's fair. Tossing over to Red. How about you? What's some of your cool TTRPGs that you've gotten to taste in the last little bit?
Oh yeah. So I really like Monster of the Week. It's a Powered by the Apocalypse game. I think that the premise that you're just kick-ass monster hunters is kind of cool. But also the way that it's kind of set up is it's really easy to learn. And Evil Hat has done, that's the publication company, has done a lot of like work in making sure that like resources available to you to understand the game. Like they have a keeper sheet and a player reference sheet that kind of goes over the high levels. And I also like that as a keeper, your goal is to make the players look as awesome as possible. And having that as a baseline and just written out for everyone to see, I think makes it more fun for everybody. Because you know, there's a lot of times where you're afraid, like in like D&D 5e, for example, that you hear like the GM's out to get you, and that they're gonna kill your party. And it's not often true, but sometimes it is. And so having that like written out in the rule book, I think it just makes it more fun, and it's a different take on it that I haven't seen. Other ones I enjoy is Tin Candles. I think it's really cool that it's one of the only games I've seen that creates a physical environment for you to play in and actually has mechanics based around that. So Tin Candles isn't like as well known of a game. It's pretty well known, but just in case you don't know about it, it's a horror game where you play by the light of tin candles, and as the game progresses, the candles either go out on their own, or if they fail a roll, like a candle gets blown out, and once all 10 candles are out, the game's over, and everyone's dead. So having that use of those physical mechanics, it's just really cool in my mind, and plus it creates that horror atmosphere, and kind of brings that like feebleness of like your life is just like a flame on a small candle because they're little bitty tea lights. I also like the World of Darkness games. I think it's really cool that they have there's like different games within World of Darkness, but they all have like a combination of lore that feeds into each other, and I just like seeing the intricacies of that. Yeah.
There's so many. To touch on Monster of the Week, you said that it's cool to play a bunch of like badass monster hunters, or you could be like me and play a 78-year-old man who has amnesia and can't fight at all, and it's sad and tragic. And I love Powered by the Apocalypse. I just wanted to toss that like that little anecdote in there of like the fact that you could do, you know, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer kind of like super badass, or in my case, Hector Bartholomew, who was a disgraced professor. You know, it's super versatile. Brandon, tell me.
Maria.
Tell me.
All right, so favorite systems at the moment, I have two. Blades in the Dark, which at the time of this recording, I've only played, I have not run. But I really enjoy that.
Not true. You have run it. You've run it not on channel, but for private games.
We technically haven't had our first session yet. We only had the setup, but true. This was a week later. I would have run it twice by now. But Anyways,
Well, by the
I
time
really
this goes live, just assume the experience that you're gonna have.
Yeah. Just assume I had a great time and I didn't murder everyone.
Yeah.
But I really love the idea of going into this city known as Dustfall, and being like, no one is good. And it's an interesting take on that because you can be a morally good person, but at the end of the day, you're going to do bad things. And there are going to be consequences for those actions. Along with that, I love the faction system that gets introduced, and also kind of looking at it from a wider perspective. Dishonored is one of my favorite video games, and it's a touchstone for Blades in the Dark, along with stuff like the crows from Shadow and Bone and all kinds of other cool properties. So being able to dive into this world already knowing what is expected of me and being able to just pick up a character and go is so much fun. The other one is not actually a published tabletop RPG, and it's called The Path, which I have been helping develop. And I'm just going to cheat and talk about that. It's a D100 system, and it is basically like you are a witch, and there are different disciplines of magic, and the magic system is if you think you can do it and explain how you can do it, there's a D100 chance that you can. And it's so good, and our friends who pitched me the original idea have done such a wonderful job at the world building, and I just love playing in that world. It's so good.
That sounds so cool. And
I'm working on a hack, Maria. I got you. Working on a hack.
I'm so very excited. I talked about it in the last episode, but I've recently fallen in love, similar to what Rob was talking about, Worlds of Darkness, Vampire the Masquerade. I love it. I think specifically because I'm playing in a game, an offline game that is just like so very like juicy and terrible and wonderful all at the same time. But to keep things fresh and new, a couple of new ones that I want to mention. There was a GM-less game that I played on the Mythos Mystery Society called Our Traveling Home, which is a Ghibli-inspired TTRPG, loosely inspired by Howl's Moving Castle. If you watch the show or watch our show or read through Our Traveling Home, loosely is kind of it's very much inspired by Howl's Moving Castle, and it was really fun to play. I'm starting to enjoy GM-less games a bit more. They definitely require people understanding that like you have to really take charge and be like, all right, now it's my turn to start telling the story. So it's really, really fun to play when you have a bunch of people who have like GM'd or run games before. You put them all into one game together, and then it's just it's beautiful. It's lovely. But the other one that I wanted to mention, which is also on Mythos Mystery Society, is the Fear Itself system, which is actually technically it's the Gumshoe system, and Fear Itself is their like horror vein. But I've done 3 of them now, and I think James, you were there for the last one.
I have played a lot of systems, but it's always just been like a one shot.
Yeah.
We're like, hey, we're gonna play this. All right, we'll set up and never come back to it.
Yeah, but it's a D6 system, and there's also like a point buying aspect or a point spending aspect. You can spend points in skills so that you don't have to roll, or your rolls give you more information or things of that nature. But the gist of that is you are people who can do things. So if you have points in a skill, you are good at that skill, and a lot of the times you don't have to roll or anything for it. But Dave from the Mythos Mystery Society runs great funny horror games, like comedic horror. There's comedy aspects, and then he just literally rips your body apart sometimes. And it's really,
Love
really good. And so those are the two that I mentioned this time. But to kind of pivot slightly, we all play in TTRPGs in one aspect or another. And what I'll start with James, because I know the answer a little bit, so I'm gonna pick on you first. What about the tabletop genre in general, what about playing TTRPGs made you want to make a company about or focused on making things for tabletop RPG games?
Okay, so the answer to this might not be what you'd expect. So Goblin Society Games started out making a video game in college, but everybody graduated, and it kind of fell apart. We tried to continue it with a few people, but the problem with a video game is you need like 12 departments. So when that kind of fell through, I still wanted to do something creative with the Goblin Society Games brand that we kind of talked about making. And so 5e had still relatively recently come out. This was like 2016. And I was like, okay, well, there's not really a lot of like magic items that are official. Like there's some in the book, but other than the handful you get in the DMG. That's something that I and an artist, only two people necessary to make this. And if I needed to, I could do the art myself. So that's where that started. And that was our first product that came out, was the Magic Items book. It did come out right before several other companies also made
you mean this
giant
one?
Magic Items books, but that's okay.
Hey, we can say that we kind of did it first, so ta-da, you can get the book. It's got
we
magic
started
items.
first, almost certainly. That's how slow it was.
That's true.
I mean, when there's 300 items.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all of them have art.
Yeah.
We made that, or I made that, I should say, and it was essentially like, at the very least, I'll have made something I can decide if this is something I want to keep doing. But yeah, that's kind of how it started. So what made me want to make TTRPG stuff was the convenience of being able to do it with a very small team. And again, the OGL made it really easy to start with a base of people interested. At the time. Now, this again was like, late 20-teens. We hadn't quite hit the huge takeoff that all the, like Powered by the Apocalypse is everywhere now. At the time, it wasn't really. So working with the open game license is not such a big selling point anymore because it's no longer a unique thing. But at the time, that's really kind of where it came from, was this is something that I can do without needing a bunch of other talents or other people.
Yeah.
Was that the answer you were expecting?
It's whatever answer you want to give.
That's the practical reason. If you want to ask me why I like TTRPGs, there's mostly it's just the freedom. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll get into the whys of why you like the things you like. That can be. We'll get into philosophical questions towards the end, when we're about ready to leave. But the two of you, the Huntsmens and the Hydras, why did you make this thing happen? What inspired you to create this space?
So Huntsman's Hydra actually started as a tavern in my first D&D game. And the whole purpose of it was a multi-headed business venture. And that's why it's a Hydra. From there, I kept it kind of on the back burner as like, what I would really like to do one day is have a brick and mortar game store. And I know we will probably get into that, but all four of us have talked thoroughly about that idea. And for me, it was like, what steps could I take to start getting that idea going? And part of that comes from the getting to know the product I would be trying to sell at some point. So I got super into tabletop RPGs, all the different systems available, what I liked, what I didn't like, what a typical audience liked versus what they didn't, because that can be different answers. And then along with that, teaming up with Red, it became like, how can we show this off and start making a name for ourselves even before we own a building that we could do this on? And it helps that someone has a business degree versus me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Brandon had the idea before we even met.
Oh yeah, that idea
after-
was from like 2013. Maybe.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And so then we met and started dating in 2019. So you had the idea for quite some while at that time. And so then at that point we had like, I guess 2020 is like when it really took off, but we had started talking about like our future together and like what we both wanted, and like we both wanted a store at some point. My dream was always to like retire with a bar, and own a tavern type thing. Just because I think they're fun places, and I think that there's a whole bunch of reasons why I think bars and taverns are like good ideas. There's obviously complexities to that, but but I started asking Brandon questions about like kind of what actionable steps we could take to make it happen, and like when we'd want to make it happen. And so at this point it was actually like the pandemic had started, and it was clear that businesses that would survive, especially ones that like had the brick and mortar stores, they'd have an easier time if they had some sort of online presence or some sort of like relationships built up, just because you needed to if you can't have anyone go in person. And so we started talking about ways that we could make that happen. And we were both already streaming on our own channels. So we're like, okay, why don't we do this as a starting point? We want to be multifaceted. Publishing makes sense for it at some point too. So why don't we start these other heads of the Hydra before we do the brick and mortar to kind of help build that base, help get like funds for a brick and mortar store at some place or at some point. And yeah.
That's so lovely. That's so lovely. But you bring up something else that I kind of wanted to talk about, that I mentioned earlier, is that between the lot of us, we all decided to found businesses during a very during 2020, which was a year of a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear and weirdness and change, and what are some of the challenges that you've realized, not necessarily pertaining to like having to go through 2020 as a small business, but what are some of the things that you've seen that were harder than you thought they would be, or easier than you thought they would be when it comes to like having a small business in light of 2020 and then beyond?
I have an answer. Oh, God.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say
I only
didn't
had
know.
a half an answer. I was going to improvise the rest, so please.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
As far and like it's kind of partially with 2020 and also just like difficulties with starting a business in general. I hope that's okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Honestly, taxes and expenses. Like we made a very similar mistake that cost us with like several hundred in filing that y'all did, but we did it a year later. So there's just it's on a different timing schedule for when you have to file business taxes, and it is private taxes. I am fortunate enough that I do have like a finance background, so I was able to do like some of the basic books with it. But my sister actually is a CPA and she's an accountant, and she files all our taxes. And there are things that like she had told me like while she was filing them. She's like, if you had done this, it'd make this so much easier. Like, for example, like as an expense for the business, leasing our computers and having it as an expense. Because we use our personal computers. That is technically something that the business doesn't own. And for tax purposes, generally the closer the income is to like 0, the better. And it is something that the business is using that doesn't have access to. So it would be a lease of some sort. And so learning kind of the most efficient way to document like income and expenses has been a challenge, I'd say.
Yeah, I can't agree enough. Taxes are. It doesn't help that, at least in Kentucky, you have the same forms to fill whether you are a 2-person general partnership or like a full-blown corporation. So of the hours I spend, most of it was just saying, no, we still don't own any property.
Yeah.
Nobody is renting
sense.
stuff from us. Let's move. That was it's really it's such an issue, honestly. Like, that's kind of our only annual expense other than website, is because at the very least I'm going to someone or a program to pay 100 to, I was quoted $500, and like we still have a net 0 gain. Like there's nothing that I'm filing for. I'm just paying someone hundreds of dollars to tell the government I owe them nothing because I made nothing.
Yep.
And that is absolutely a challenge. Round 2, year 2 was definitely better in that we didn't end up owing huge fines, which fortunately we got away with not paying, because apparently it's just a thing where the IRS will give you one oopsies.
We get one freebie. we at
Yep.
least got one freebie.
I think they may have changed that, because the thing they talked about was that there was a permanent exemption if you met certain criteria. So maybe they changed it.
So,
or maybe it was a different thing.
It might have been a different thing. Yeah. What I was told was that by the IRS and the financial advisor that I had do the taxes that year, was that everybody gets 1 mullion, which was great, because it was like a $600 fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because again, the issue being, we didn't realize we had to file all the business taxes a full month before personal taxes.
Yep.
The
Makes sense
exact
in
same issue we
retrospect,
had. I wondered if it was. It was.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it was just too late. And it's not based on income, it's based on how many days late you are and how many people needed the form. So it had nothing to do with the fact that we made money, because we didn't. It just was like $600 because we were X
Here's
days
a fine
late for
because you
3 people.
inconvenienced us.
Because you inconvenienced yourselves. That was the kick in the nuts, really.
Yeah, my sister,
No,
I talk with her about it, and she's like, like, if you hadn't even filed, because like you don't make any money, like no one would have cared.
Yeah.
Because you're so small
Yeah.
that it doesn't matter.
That's the one time I'm glad. Like, I would love to hear, hey, you actually don't matter. That's the one instance where I would love to hear that, when it becomes to paying someone money that I don't owe them.
On the other side of things, something that I found surprisingly easy is layout work. Everything we publish right now goes through. I'm sorry. Do you need some layouts done?
Do it. We'll talk. We'll talk.
I use Affinity, which my brother got me in contact with, which is often on sale for like $30, and it's like professional level software. I was comparing to Adobe.
We're not doing the Adobe rant right now.
We're not going to do the Adobe rant, but all right.
Long and short, Affinity.
Affinity, yeah. I mean, is it perfect? No. Is it $30 instead of $90 a month? Yes. That's what's really important. But layout I found to be a lot easier and simpler. And since everything we do is through drive-through, and they're fortunately pretty well documented, actually getting printed copies of things was a much smoother and easier process than I thought it would be.
And it's
Now-
like most of the time also
Yeah.
like this is like their books. Great.
I guess I should
Great.
clarify. Printed copies through drive-through are easier than I was expecting because they already have a system in place. They have a publisher. They have everything. It was as easy as sending them the files, getting them approved, ordering a copy, getting the copy, saying this is great. Now it's for sale. Click the button.
Yeah.
A lot less hassle than I kind of originally expected to do physical copies. So that was something. Now, drive-through takes a cut for that, but honestly, it's
At the moment, it's worth
for the
it.
amount that they cover.
Yeah.
So I would say getting a physical thing was one of the most satisfying and surprisingly easy things to do.
For me, it's been more which this has changed over the past 2 years since starting up Huntsman's Hydra, but like we're 2 people. And so how much work can you actually get done with just 2 people without having to pay someone else to help with it? Because one of the big things I went into with this was I am not going to ask for help unless I know I can pay them for it. And that does become a struggle when you're making the overlays, you're making the sound effects, you're doing all of the things on the streaming side and on the design side. So it's been an interesting challenge to say the least. But we're very lucky that we have a bunch of friends who are more than willing to tell me to shut up and help anyway.
Yeah, that was also something that I really wanted to do was, if I'm getting art from someone, if I'm asking anyone for anything, they're getting some fee. Now, obviously, we're not exactly rolling in wealth. A lot of that is deeply discounted from friends. And a lot of it too is royalties, which I have a whole spiel to give on how important I think royalties are for anything like this. But
well, tell us about it then. Let's talk about that. Because like this is something that like if this is to give anyone who's watching or listening to this an idea of like these are the sorts of things that we collectively and individually decided as small businesses are priorities for us. So there's definitely some businesses who don't, and they have reasons, I'm sure, but like this is just to give an insight of like what we think is important. So please tell us about that.
So I have a few quirks that I've put into Goblin Sided Games so far, and I don't know if they'll stick around forever. But the first one is I don't credit the team individually. I just credit Goblin Sided Games. Commissioned people I do credit, particularly artists, but I like the idea of us being Goblin Society Games, not a writer, and this person did all of this, and this was the director, and just I don't think it's intentional, but a lot of time I'll see credits for something, and it's like almost a game to see how many things you can get listed under. And I just really like the idea of it being the emphasis is more on who we are as a group and not who we are as individuals in that group. I don't know if that'll stick around forever, but you'll notice on any of our stuff so far that it's just by Goblin Society Games, and then you'll usually see a credit for an artist because that's who it was. It was the Goblin Society Games people and an artist or two. The other thing I always have to do is do some form of royalty or commission, because I want everyone who works on this to feel like their work matters. Their work has a direct result on what the result of the product is. And I want people to feel like if they work hard, they're going to get something for that hard work, not doing what they need to do, but what they want to put into it because they're getting something back from it above whatever flat amount they're paid. And that kind of just leads into, in general, I feel very strongly that I want Goblin Slayer Games, especially internally, but even a little externally, to be very open and transparent about finances, largely because it's something super useful to people trying to do this sort of thing, but partly because I just personally philosophically believe that most people are not going to get mad finding out who makes how much money, you know. I very much want this to be the sort of thing where we all understand and can justify the amount of money that we're putting in and getting out of it. So I mean, I'm happy to share that Murkrag book, we ended up paying I want to say about $3,000 for all the art, which was a steal for 300 pieces, but
Plus
one,
the
it was a
cover,
friend.
plus like, yeah.
Yeah, and two, the deadline was pretty much whenever you want to work on it. But of that, you know, we've, I think, made in total about $1,500 as a company. So, and this is year 3.
I think we
We're
officially
about
found it.
to
We
finish
officially,
2 years. Yeah.
yeah. We officially found it in 2020.
So it's just stuff like that. As far as the money goes, I want everyone to feel like they have some stake in it beyond this is what I'm getting paid to do, and as long as it's acceptable, then the transaction's done.
Yeah.
Which
real quick note, because when you initially told me, you know, credit everything as Goblin Society, I know we went back and forth on that a little bit, just because I have different opinions. What I really like about your statement, and what anyone who's doing a small business should listen to, is we may credit as this, but everyone gets paid this, probably plus some extra. Like, people are getting paid as individuals. It's not just an easy split thing.
Yeah.
Please keep that in mind. Because I know that's something that Brian and I are now talking about more, as we have talent who are doing shows and should be paid for that. And depending on what our GMs are willing to do, changes like, you know, how much players get paid versus how much the producer gets paid. Plus, I think being transparent, we take, like, just for production costs for future shows, we take 10 to 20% of whatever it is and then split it up past that. So let's see, Huntsman's Hydra in general has made, since the beginning of the year, $40. That sounds right.
Yeah.
Yep. That sounds right.
And then the rest of it, the rest of that amount, because you can do the math from there, goes to paying GMs, paying players, and then in a sense paying me for my time, because I'm the only producer right now. But like, just goes from there. So yeah, it's great that kind of both businesses are very much like, here's our financials, this is what this is how we split this up, and we want you to know this so you know what you're getting into.
And I think what it comes down to me is that I feel strongly that people should get paid for the amount that they're working. Just because you founded it doesn't mean you should be profiting from the work below you, right? Like, in a lot of companies, it almost becomes like a pyramid scheme. You did something years ago, and now you're getting paid, you know, hundreds or more times than the people actually making it work. And I feel strongly that my business, at least, I want it to be for the employees. I want it to be an even split among the people, myself and everyone else who's involved in making it work. I don't want it to be me, and eventually the people under me will help make me more money. I want us to be making money together, I guess, is where that comes from.
Yeah, and I think for us, at least anyway, like, Brandon and I generally don't take, like, any money from, like, that goes to, like, Huntsman's Hydra on the whole. Like, Brandon, we just recently made the decision, since, like, Brandon's doing, like, the production stuff. Like, if anyone else is producing, we'd pay them. Brandon, like, gets some money for producing. But as far as, like, being owners, everything goes back into the business because we want it to grow.
Yeah, and that's how it's been for us as well.
Yeah.
Um, something that I really enjoy about the fact that the four of us did this at the same time, it because when James and I and our business partner Joe, we all decided, mostly James decided he wanted to make this into an actual physical company. It's hard, much like a lot of things, when you're doing something and you feel like you're doing it and you're the only one doing it and nobody is there and nobody understands like what's going on, you know, the struggles, the things that you have to deal with and all of that. So it's one of the things that I appreciate having gotten to know you, Brandon and Mariah, is that like these are things that we can both in this kind of context, in like a talk show type context, but also in, you know, private spaces, be able to talk about and ask for advice. Like, and the idea that we are not competing against each other. We're doing very similar things. They're like slightly shifted, but we're doing very similar things, but the whole environment of specifically like the TTRPG businesses, like production and all that sort of stuff, not all of them, but there's a good amount of them that treat it like a competition. That, you know, oh, how am I going to get noticed? Well, I have to be better than this other person. I have to be bigger than this other person. I have to make sure that, you know, and there's some credit to wanting to make sure that you stand out, but we're not competing against each other in any way, shape, or form. We're in a lot of ways, and I can only speak between like Goblin Society Games and Huntsmen Hydra, but in general, a lot of things that we as creators of TTRPG stuff, a lot of the time, the things that we are creating can in fact benefit the other people who are also creating stuff. So like we have a giant book of magic items that can be used in 5e games, perhaps, that Huntsman's Hydra runs, you know, things of that nature. What? Why would that ever happen?
Who would have thought?
Who doesn't say we're in that right now?
What? Or like being able to use the services of like Huntsman's Hydra for like when Goblin Society Games starts running games. We have, because we are working as not only friends, because we are friends in real life, but as two businesses who have things to offer, why would we want to compete instead of working in tandem? So all of that to say, friends, the TTRPG space is huge and vast, and it is full of a lot of things, but that doesn't mean that we have to fight each other to get up. We can, in fact, work together and pull people up with us.
Yeah.
Because, wow, you can make a really big wall if you have a lot of people together and then pull each other up over top of it, you know?
I really think that goes back to the philosophy of the open game license that Wizards did. It was basically saying, we're going to bet that getting more people interested in this is going to be more important for our company than being alone. And it worked. Like, yeah, maybe they lost some sales by letting other people pull away from D&D. Like, I mean, Pathfinder essentially did exactly that. But at the same time, those people who wouldn't have played anything but now play Pathfinder now have a link to D&D. And I think, I wasn't there, but that's kind of like the core reasoning behind what the open game license was. And I think that applies to just about everything in this hobby, is that no one is ever going to get one game and only play it forever. People have disposable income and they're going to spread it out generally. And trying to just selfishly take all of people's attention isn't going to work, because you need people playing adjacent things so that they can discover your things.
It's also just not possible. Like, as companies and as individual people, we have strengths and weaknesses. We are not going to be good at everything.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I think that's kind of one of the things that, while yes, we are businesses in the same area, we do have differences and things that we are different strengths.
Mhm.
And I think using those strengths to help each other makes everyone grow. You
Mhm.
kind of mentioned that was in the TTRPG space, but I think it kind of goes beyond that to like businesses on the whole. I know that like in some like the economics and like business classes I had, one that like they use like a colloquialism that high tides rise all ships. Like it benefits everybody. When times are good, when things are working together.
Yeah.
And so kind of taking advantage of that premise and helping others in the end, even if you do view it as a competition, which I'm not saying you should, but like it also helps you.
Yeah.
It helps everybody.
And even from like a purely practical standpoint, with the advent of social media, being a dick is no longer a viable business plan. People will see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just
that's
look.
that's a
Not
that's a
that it
great,
stops people, but like, you know,
that's a great
being ruthless is no longer the way of things.
Yeah, and that's a good thing to mention too, because I know at least for Goblin Society games, Brandon takes a lot of like the literal posting of things and takes a lot of that for us, because we are two exceptionally busy people and we are able to afford to have someone try to do that for us. But the social media aspect of small businesses, I think Brandon, you mentioned it before. You are two people. We are technically three, and now also you. So technically four people.
Yeah.
And running social media, there's a reason that companies have a social media team, because it takes so much time and effort to constantly be engaging with people, constantly trying to think up new ways to engage with people. It's stressful. And to go just to comment on what you were saying, James, if you go at that again from a combative asshat kind of way of like, hey, you see all this garbage, well, look at my thing, it's very pretty and shiny. This is very pretty and shiny, but also there's a lot of good things out there. But the idea that being combative is the only way to win, that being, you know, manipulative and like, you know, trying to get in by any means possible, it might work. It might. But it only might work for a little bit. You know, you might get your in, and then people realize what kind of a person you are, and then, you know, it doesn't necessarily stick around too terribly long. So just be good about it, y'all. Just be good. Just
people respect
good.
nice people.
Don't be a jerk.
Don't be a jerk.
And also the quick little add-on to that is not only don't be a jerk, don't make your whole platform following the latest drama.
Yes.
Because then people are not going to care about your actual work. They're going to care about what your opinion is on the drama. If that, because most of the time people don't actually care about your opinion. But just like kind of hopping onto that, there's ways to approach the community that isn't just like trying to make the most clickbaity article possible, because we're seeing now news companies failing because they keep doing this, and they really only get success with certain generations on websites that are in libraries and have faces. So
yeah,
just
go ahead. Sorry, I thought you were done.
No, I'm done. I was starting to trail.
There's a time and a place for your comments. You don't need to have a comment on everything. No one wants to hear your comment on everything. Like, sometimes there may be a reason to comment on drama. Like, if your name has been brought into it personally, comment on it. Do what you need to do. But, like, if it's not about you, who cares?
Yeah, especially like from a personal side, but also more specifically from a business side, because you're specifically with social media, you are representing a business that has usually more than one person's interests there. So it becomes this kind of strange nebulous thing of how much, if there is a thing a thing that happens in the community that you are a business in, kind of touching on what everybody said a little bit, how much do you talk about it? If it doesn't relate to you, I agree with what Red was saying. If it specifically does not relate to you, maybe from a business standpoint, maybe it's better to not say anything. It comes into a strange thing if folks are asking you as a business, like, hey, what's your stance on this? What do you think about this? Then it kind of comes that's when you have to have like a meeting of everyone to be like, hey, what's your stance on this?
Yeah.
I will say that even if you don't like, I don't think you should like post and everything. I do think that you can learn from the mistakes that others have made, and kind of have those internal discussions about like, hey, how do we prevent something like this from happening? Like, we're obviously not going to do this kind of behavior, but how do we make sure no one who interacts with Huntsman's Hydra is doing that? And so it does end up leading to internal discussions, I think. And I think it's beneficial to have those conversations and learn from what's going on. I don't think you need to get clout from it, though.
Right.
Yeah.
It kind of cycles back to that idea of something happens, something gets outed, some kind of, terrible XYZ happens, and you can use that as a learning experience, like you were saying. Some individuals, however, I have seen in the past, take this and say, oh, hey, I'm not that. You should come and support me instead. And that's kind of garbage. Like, it doesn't make you look good to push
to promote
down
yourself via
in the light. By completely like shitting on other people, even if those people are doing not good things. It still does not make you the better person by pushing them down even farther, Yeah.
Also, we're not perfect. Like, there will be a time where you do make a mistake. It's like, it's inevitable. It may not be to the same extent, but if that's kind of what you're sowing, like, you reap what you sow. Like, if you're doing that type of thing, other people are definitely gonna do that to you. And yeah, I mean, it's just not necessary, and you have your own faults.
Yep. And I think too, just like in general, I've worked a lot of jobs, but the one thing that has always remained is I'll do almost anything for a nice person. As far as like customer service goes, if somebody's nice to me, I'll bend over backwards, I'll break rules. Sure, why not if they're being nice? But you reverse that as a business. If you are a nice business, if your public image, not that it's necessarily fake, but if your public image is of a pleasant, relatable person, that's when your audience is going to start giving you the benefit of the doubt and more understanding and more mercy if you do screw up.
Yeah. And just being transparent in those moments of, if you do mess up, if you have established as a business that, this level of transparency and honesty and everything, that if you mess up and you address it, people will take you seriously. And it won't be because you are trying to chase clout due to an apology, except we've seen it all over everywhere in social media and like on the internet. People get called out and then they're like, well, I'm so sorry. And then they don't, to what degree do they mean it? That's up to them.
Yeah.
But there's a certain level of believability from a consumer side that is influenced by previous actions, previous things that they've done, said, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So. And especially in the way that the tabletop RPG space is right now, which is floodgates open filling up very quickly. People are being successful by having their own audience. Not a unique audience, but people who go to a company that they know they like. And morality aside, which I would never actually put aside, but practically speaking, from a purely business standpoint, having your audience like you is more important than anything else you can do.
I used to do debate in high school and college, and one thing I never really understood is that there was a saying that that if you do something bad, people will look for a reason to vote against you, like to say that you lose. They'll look for an excuse.
Mhm.
The scummier you act, the more like business practices they'll look for as a reason to not support you. Like, I guess like what I'm saying is like you could be the biggest business ever, which like isn't gonna happen in the TTRPG space. But like if you act like shitty people, people are gonna start looking for the holes in the business on the whole, and try and find ways not to support you. Because why would they want to work with you? Like people are gonna look for legitimate business reasons to not work with you if you're a jerk.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's just a long way of saying, if you want to start a business, be cool. Chill.
just be cool, you know?
Nice guys don't finish last. It's important now.
To kind of lead us from here into a little bit more of a positive spin on everything that we've been talking about. And I'll start with the Huntsman's Hydra half of this conversation. What do you hope to bring into the TTRPG space in general and into the world as a whole, which sounds like a big thing, with what you're doing? What are your aspirations for the future from a business side? And then like, you know, maybe even loftier, like general hopes that you as individuals want to bring to the community, to people at large, etc. What do you want to get out of this in the like least like selfish way possible? What do you want to accomplish?
Okay, selfish side first.
Let's
'cause
go.
It's a really easy one.
Uh-huh.
I want to be able to pay our bills using this space. That is not like I want to be rich out of the tabletop community. I want to survive out of the tabletop community. And that is a realistic goal versus what some people come into this space thinking. Along with that, like I talked about, I want a brick and mortar store. That idea has also changed over time to where it's now like we want a space where people can hang out, where shows could get produced if we wanted to provide that space, and be able to bring all of that energy and creativity that we're bringing into these other projects into something that is physical but can still exist in that online space. And then as far as feelings go, I just want to show people cool games that aren't, as much as I love D&D and how it got me into the space, one of my biggest things in 2022 has been doing things that aren't D&D, because it's not the only game out there, and people should learn more about that.
But we are recording D&D tomorrow, right?
We are, at the time of this recording, we have a D&D game tomorrow, but
D&D.
also it's on a really cool platform that isn't just gonna be D&D at the end of
This
it.
is true.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm just being a dick.
Hey, what did you
had
just
that
talk about?
conversation.
Listen, just
can I
because
do
I
a-
know it's right doesn't mean I'm gonna fall.
Can I do a quick shout out for a store? Queen of the Brook. It was a store that we went to in Philadelphia at PAX Unplugged, all of us. And the atmosphere that everyone had when being there, the sense of community, the sense of everyone is enjoying and like kind of showing off what they loved. That is something that I want to bring. I want to have a place that can create that atmosphere where people can feel comfortable sharing their nerdiness, essentially. Because a lot of times people feel like they can't for whatever reason. I want to be able to create a safe space for that where people are able to do that type of thing. Yeah, and so that's a lot of like why I want to like do it is I want to see that atmosphere be created. Uh and that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about how like I think there are benefits to like bars and taverns because they do kind of foster that atmosphere at times if they're done right. And so creating a place that enables people to be themselves and to have fun and kind of forget about the real world for 2 hours, I think is just so beneficial. And I think that people need it. And so if we can help do that while also potentially supporting ourselves and paying our bills, why not?
Yeah. It to also kind of call out the space that you were talking about. That's where we just played Magic the Gathering in the middle of the place,
Yes.
right? It's a restaurant, it's a board game shop, it's like it's all sorts of things all at once, but it was really cool because we just showed there was a lot of us and we showed up and we're like, we're gonna do a Magic the Gathering draft just at the table. And then the person, one of the people, the wait staff behind the bar was like, hey, do y'all need land? And they just literally put a giant box of land cards on our table for us to just use.
Here, have
Like
all
that-
these promo cards.
Have
Yeah.
these cards for free. You want me to run a tournament for you? Like an official tournament? Like I can pop that up there real quick.
Yeah.
So
Shout
cool.
out.
Yeah.
I wish I
like,
remembered that dude's name because he
yeah,
was,
it was
the
so,
best.
It was so cool because it wasn't something that we had like talked ahead of time with them. It just happened and then they were like on it.
Yep.
So I'm absolutely there with you about that like atmosphere of a place where nerdy, geeky, cool people can hang out and just do the things that they like to do and not, you know, and like, and not to say that people who don't enjoy those things can still come in there and still enjoy and have a good time, have good drinks, have good food or anything like that, but also like it's a physical space where folks who enjoy these things don't have to feel like they're being the weird ones, you know.
It's almost a parallel to what I imagine like a sports bar would be like if I really liked sports.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's that con feeling. Like I felt the same way at that bar as we did at the con. It was like all of these people, I already have something in common with them.
Mhm,
Yeah,
by
it
default.
just, it's like an immediate icebreaker almost, you know. You see someone playing game, you don't feel as weird going over and talking about it because you both, by being in this place, have already announced your love of this sort of thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And at least to me, that's what the bar was like as well, and that I think is something that I would love to see. And most comic book stores, for me, honestly, are the very rare place where you can find that feeling. You walk in and you know that you have something in common with these people, and it's, I don't know, it's different than you get anywhere else in public.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So James,
Mm.
how about you? With Goblin Society games as a whole, what sort of things do you hope for the future for Goblin Society games, and what sort of more nebulous things do you hope to be able to bring to the world, TTRPG world or other, with what Goblin Society games does, is, etc.
Wealth beyond measure. No.
Get out.
I mean, not that I would turn
the
it down.
call is broken.
But, to me, very similar to Brandon's answer. I would like to be able to put time into it beyond. I would like to be able to make enough from it that I can put time into it again. I mean, without a doubt, the biggest issue that Goblin Society games faces is time, because it's very hard to come home after a 40-hour work week with the creative energy to sit down and work some more, essentially. So ultimately, I would like to at least have some income from it. I take it a step further. I would like to be able to hire people that I think would really be able to benefit, and I would like to be able to make it a good job for them. I would like to hire not necessarily friends, but people that are as interested in doing this sort of thing and don't necessarily have the opportunity to start something. I want to offer people their dream jobs, who wherever this is what it is, and I want to be able to run it in a way that I think a business should be run. More creatively speaking, I want to make things that people don't think should exist. I really enjoy, and anyone who's played Magic with me will know, anything I build is mostly because somebody said that's not a good idea. Taking things that people don't think would work together and seeing what I can do with it. That's what I really enjoy. Practically speaking, there's a game that I'm very slowly brewing because more important things are in the works. I want to hybridize a tabletop role-playing game with a deck builder game. I want to see what that could look like. And even to an extent, the Kobold Grinder, which is coming out soon, is a hybrid of a tabletop game and a board game. So I guess I just want to make things that are new. Mm-hmm. Whether they're successful or not, I want to take a bad idea and see how good it can be.
Yeah, and I to add my take on also that me personally, I want to do everything in my power to make sure people see what James is making, because in my opinion, this is definitely like James's vision, the Goblin Society games, all these creative things, everything that he's making. My job is to make sure that people see it, because I see it like every day and I think it's really cool. And James can only hear me talk about how cool it is so many times a day. And so my hope is, by doing things like this, or like conventions, or doing things like social media wise, or just publicly, me being the face, and by extension Brandon being a voice of Goblin Society games, we can get people talking about it. We can get people excited to see what sort of weird things we're gonna make next, what sort of like cool, quirky things that people can add into their games and make something new. My hope, my emotional savvy hope, is to make sure James always feels like what he is making matters.
How dare you?
You came into my show. You did this voluntarily.
I'm allergic to positivity.
But I like you guys a lot. You're all great. You're so cool.
You're so you
friends.
Boomerang. You
Boomerang forever in this circle forever. Any closing thoughts or feelings or comments or anything on anyone's mind from all of this?
Don't be scummy. Share what you love.
That's it.
There it is. There it is. Don't be scummy. Share what you love, friends. Y'all are so creative. Keep doing it. Keep making things, and I'll just keep being loud about it. So there. Haha. Speaking of the things that y'all are creating, what sort of places can people find you at? Where can people find you? Where can people find the things that you make? And if there's anything that you're making or doing by the time this airs or has already finished that you want to tell people about, please do so. James, I'll start with you since you're here.
Wow, Brandon, pass. No, I'll take this
Boomerang.
one. Right now, Goblin Society Games is working on the Kobold Grinder, which is if you think of like a tabletop RPG one-shot mixed with a board game, the concept is that all the players are terrible kobolds, trying to make it through some horribly trapped and dangerous rooms. When your kobold inevitably fails, there's a stack of pre-made ones. You just draw it and keep going. It's very much a competitive co-op sort of
Dungeon rush.
snowball
kind of thing.
through the dungeon and see what happens. It's it's like a drinking game sort of game.
I would not want to play with drinking rules. No.
Yeah, dangerous. But it's a comedy board game, I guess, is the best way to put it.
It's a good time. And just to hype up James a little bit, since he is allergic to positivity. I was pitched the initial idea before I did the playtest, and I was like, what the hell is this? Like this. And then I started playing, and I was like, oh, that was actually an app description for this. This is fun. It's definitely one of those games where you need the right group.
For sure.
But once you get into it, it's one of those where you could knock out like 3 rounds of that game in plenty of time and have gone through the entire stack of kobolds and having to start over with that. And it's just it's that concept of throwing a bunch of mooks at a dungeon just to see what happens, and I love it so much.
It's my original tagline for it before it was ever like a thing, really, was it's like, what if you were trying to go through the Tomb of Horus but you were all level 1? It was kind of how it started and grew from there.
Where can people find these sorts of things, James?
GoblinSocietyGames.com.
Yay!
And on Twitter at Society Goblin.
Yes, you can also find us on DriveThruRPG. That's where we're selling our stuff. There may be new places to find our stuff, but you should follow our social medias on Twitter and Instagram, run by the one very, very wonderful Brandon, to make sure that you know when we're doing stuff, where we're doing stuff. We also have a handful of other things besides Kobold Grinder is going to be our newest thing, but we have, of course, the 300 magic items for D&D 5e. We have some silly items. We have also a book of cantrips called Lesser Magic. Voila. That if you are playing a cleric and you realize, oh, clerics don't have a whole lot of cantrips, well, guess what? We got you covered. But yeah, a bunch of D&D based supplements. We have a lot of stuff in the works. We got some sci-fi stuff coming up. We got some card game stuff coming up as just like a very brief sprinkling to get you interested. But yeah, the socials of the Goblin Society Games is where you're gonna be most updated as to what we're doing. But that's us. How about y'all?
Red, you're going first.
Okay. Well, I'm Mischievous Red. I will still be appearing on a variety of shows when this comes out. But if you do want to see what I am creating art-wise, I would check out my channel at Mischievous Red. I will also be running a game shortly on Huntsman's Hydra, utilizing the Vesson system. So it takes place just around the turn of the Industrial Revolution in the Scandinavian countries, where the Vesson, or the random mythological creatures of the area, have been acting up. And as investigators, you are responsible for trying to figure out why they're acting up and helping the townsfolk resolve their issues with the Vesson, who were once previously peaceful.
Wonderful, excellent. Brandon, tell us about you, and then also Huntsman's Hydra.
Yes, so I will start with Huntsman's Hydra. So Huntsman's Hydra is a multifaceted tabletop board game and card game industry business thing. You can find it at Huntsman's Hydra everywhere, actually. So there it is, one word, Huntsman's Hydra. Yes, there is a double plural. Don't worry about it. But Beyond that, we have multiple shows going on. Let's see, when this airs, we will be wrapping up season 1 of Fire in the Dark with some finale pieces. That's our Blades in the Dark actual play. We are probably on break for Denari's Half Dozen, which is our Swords of the Serpentine actual play. We will be getting ready for Vassum. And then I might have something. I don't know if there will be spell slots, but on Sunday, alternating Sundays from Fire in the Dark, we have the Lost Druid, featuring everyone in this call, plus our wonderful friend Vibing with V-Day, which is a D&D 5e campaign, GM'd by me, sponsored by Alchemy RPG. And then also we run a wonderful community over on Discord that is constantly doing things like Magic the Gathering nights or one-shots with our community. And it is also where Red and I host our private spaces along with that. So all that being said, I am also Ashenworks, everywhere on Twitter, everywhere at Ashenworks except on Twitter, Ashen_works. And I'm sure all of this is in the description somewhere.
We got you.
Yeah, see. And I do tabletop RPG design. By this point, I'm hoping that my Lumen Hack Dragoon is done, because it's in layout right now. I'm hoping I finally print Hot Tubs and Himbos. And proceeds to that will be going to a LGBT charity. I'm thinking Equality Texas, but by the time this airs, I should actually know. And I am currently working on a card game that you can follow along over on my Patreon called The Hunt, which is inspired by Inscription, Bloodborne, and all things spooky, and is fun stuff. I think that's it. Otherwise, I do stream on my own channel sometimes, but just keep up with my socials and you'll know when.
Follow all these wonderful people and the things that they do. As always, you can find me here or on the interwebs at happycapster. I have a lot of links into a lot of places. Thank you all here in this beautiful call for being beautiful people and creative people and sharing all of your thoughts and everything with me. James, I see you. Stop it.
Accept our love, James.
Accept it. And until next time, everyone, may your cups be full and warm and full of delicious things. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.